please keep, like Ralph said, keep all those that we have on our prayer list. There's a few that we added this morning to the prayer list. So you guys keep them in prayer. And remember, prayer works. So today we're in 2 Kings chapter 6. 2 Kings chapter 6, just to refresh you guys a little bit about 5. That's where we had found out about Naaman's leprosy being healed. And then there was a certain thing that happened where Naaman's leprosy was transferred from Naaman to Gehazi, right?
Yep.
And Gehazi, the reason why that happened was he got greedy, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And so Elisha just wound up saying, telling him that, greed got him nowhere except for leprosy. So therefore, the leprosy of Naaman clung to Gehazi's descendants forever. And so Gehazi left Elisha as a leper with his skin white as snow. That's where we left off there in 2 Kings chapter 5. So we're going to pick up right there, 2 Kings chapter 6. And we're going to go forward. It says, the floating axe head said, and the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, see now, the place where we dwell with you is too small for us. Please let us go to the Jordan, and let every man take a beam from there, and let us make there a place where we may dwell. And so he answered, go. Then one said, please consent to go with your servants. And he answered, I will go. So he went with them, and when they came to the Jordan, they cut down trees. But as one was cutting down a tree, the iron axe head fell into the water, and he cried out and said, alas, master, for it was borrowed. So the man of God said, where did it fall? And he showed him the place. So he cut off a stick and threw it in there, and he made the iron float. Therefore he said, pick it up for yourself. So he reached out his hand and took it. Now the king of Syria was making war against Israel, and he consulted with his servants, saying, my camp will be such and such a place. And the man of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are coming down there. Then the king of Israel sent someone to the place of which the man of God had told him. Thus he warned him, and he was watchful there, not just once or twice. Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was greatly troubled by this thing, and he called his servants and said to them, will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, none, my lord, O king. But Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. So he said, go and see where he is, that I may send and get him. And it was told him, saying, surely he is in Dothan. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there for a minute in 14. So at first, we see verses 1 through 3. It talks about what?
About a king wanting to make war, and before that, the axe head that had broken off.
Well, right before that, it's talking about the prophets, the sons of the prophets.
Yes.
What? They were saying to Elijah what?
We need a bigger place.
We need a bigger place. Yeah. And why do you think that was? Why do you think they said that? Because Elijah's ministry had grown, hadn't it? And the people that wanted to learn from the prophet of God was just getting larger and larger and larger, right? So Elisha's ministry was growing, right? Mm-hmm. And what did Elisha ask to happen to him when he became a prophet, when Elijah passed away? What did he say?
Portion.
What was his answer? A what?
Double portion.
A double portion, that his ministry would grow, right? And flourish. So we see this happening. So God is doing what?
He's blessing his ministry.
He's blessing Elisha. And so here he's saying what? Okay, let's do that, you know? And so we also see what? That the king of Syria is now doing what?
He's going to make war.
He's back at it again, right? He's
Yep.
making war against Israel, right? Okay, and then we see that it says the place where we dwell is too small for us. So this indicates that at this time Elisha had a significant impact on the nation, and the old facility for housing the sons of prophet was not large enough to meet the needs of those who wanted to be trained in the ministry. And that's just, I mean, that's wonderful. Isn't it? That's just showing that God was working through Elisha and bringing up godly people that wanted to work in the ministry, wanted to go out and tell the good news. And this is something that should happen here. When we hear the preaching or we hear the word of God or we hear it's being taught right, we should want to go out and tell others the same thing. We should want to go out and tell them how wonderful the Lord is and how God has worked or impacted our lives, you know. It says, but one of the servants said what? He said, please consent to go with your servants, right? So, and Elisha said, Elisha did not initiate or lead this work of building a new center for training the prophets, but it could not happen without what? His approval or blessing, right? God's approval, and Elisha saying, okay, let's do it. You know? Then they got down to the Jordan, and now, Billy, tell us what happened.
The axe head broke off.
But they were doing what? They were cutting beams?
Cutting beams, yeah.
They were cutting them bamboo beams, and the axe head fell off of the axe handle and did what?
Fell in the river.
Fell in the water.
That's right, yeah.
And if anybody knows anything about iron, iron don't float, does it? What does iron do?
Sink.
It sinks to the bottom, right? So yes, this means that they had iron back then, but 9 times out of 10, the iron was probably pretty expensive, or very rare in places and stuff. So it says the iron axe head fell into the water. This was a significant loss because iron was certainly present at the time in Israel, but it was not common enough to be cheap. So this fellow that lost it was like, oh, master, I done did a boo-boo. I done lost the axe handle.
It was borrowed. It actually his.
Right. Yep. So he thought he was what? He may have to replace it, right? That's what we do. If we lose something, someone's let us borrow, then we have to replace it. It says, alas, master, for it was borrowed. It says the man who lost the axe head was rightly sensitive to the fact that he lost something that belonged to someone else, making the loss more, acute, which means more profound, absolutely. So it wasn't his to lose, was it? So what happened? What do we see that Elisha do? What did he do?
He did a miracle.
He did a miracle, exactly, Ralph, exactly. He cut off a stick and threw it in there, and he made the iron float, didn't he? It says,
a wooden magnet.
It says, back in court, it says, Elijah threw a stick in the river at the exact spot where the axe head had entered, and the stick caused the heavy iron object to float to the surface. Through this miracle, the Lord again provided for one who was faithful to him. In other words, they were faithful in the Lord, and Elisha more than likely prayed before he threw that stick down, and said, Lord, let us get that axe head back, and he made it float. It said this was obviously a unique miracle. There was no trickery in the way that Elisha put the stick in the water. It was simply an expression of faith that God honored.
Right.
Okay? Says God can do all things. He can make iron swim. We cannot. And yet you see the prophet did it, and he did it by the use of a stick. He cut down a stick, and it says, was there any connection between the stick and the iron? Did it say there was any, like he stuck the stick down and it just happened to go into the axe head and he pulled the stick up with the axe head on the end of it? No, he just threw it in the water, right? Just threw it in.
Well, if he knew where it fell, why didn't he just reach in the water and grab it?
Could have been too deep.
That's what I thinking.
Could have been too deep. You know, could have been too deep. You never know. You know, the river might have swept it on down. You never know. But this was the opportunity where faith and the miracle came together. You know what I'm saying?
He could have put on the scuba gear one day.
Yeah, he could have used a bamboo sleeve and just
Yes,
put it on there.
Stuck in that bag.
Right. And he says what? Pick it up for yourself. He told him to pick it up for himself, right? It says God could have arranged a way for the axe head to appear right in the man's hand without any effort on his part. But this miracle worked in a familiar way. God did the part only he could do, but he left to man the part that only the man was going to do, you know. So Elisha then caused the submerged axe head to surface and instructed the pupil to retrieve the axe. Thus he would personally participate in the miracle. So then after that, what happens? What do we see going on?
War.
And
I guess they went back to.
Yeah, went straight back into the war stuff. But go ahead, Jackie. You were going to say something about the Syrian king.
the king of Syria decided he was going to attack Israel.
Right. He decided, you know, it's time. Let's go and attack Israel, right? It says, so now the king of Syria was making war against Israel, and he consulted with his servants, saying, my camp will be such and such a place. And the man of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, beware, do not pass this way, for the Syrians are coming down there. So, you think this is something that Elisha just heard, or was it something that, was it hearsay, scuttlebutt that just got back to Elijah, or do you think it was something that God allowed Elijah to hear from him? Was it God speaking to Elisha?
God told Elijah.
God told Elijah, absolutely. God told Elisha what the Syrian king was about to do. That way he could warn the Israel king not to go by there. Because if he did, what? Certainly be ambushed. Absolutely. It says, and the man of God sent to the king of Israel, says, Elisha did not support the corrupt monarchs of Israel, but he knew that it was even worse for Israel to be conquered and subjected under Syria. Therefore, he gave the king of Israel information from divinely inspired word. Right? It says, a more sensible king, Jehoram, now sits on the throne of Ahab, and the prophet of the Lord is no longer a dreaded antagonist, but the king's trusted counselor. It says Elijah was a fugitive, constantly on the run from a wrathful king, but now Elisha is a welcome visitor in Jehoram's court.
That's right.
Okay, will you not? Okay, so when the king of Syria asked his men, will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? Why did he ask that question?
Looking for a traitor.
What? Ralph, say it again. Say it again.
He's looking for a traitor.
That's right. Absolutely, Ralph. He's looking for the one that told on him, right? Which one of y'all told the king of Israel that I said this, right? So he's looking for a traitor, right? And why was he looking for a traitor?
Because he wasn't able to ambush Israel because they knew his plan.
That's right. And the reason why he knew their plan is because Elisha, the man of God, was given word from God. And so, but here we see the Syrian, the pagan king. That never even crossed his mind that the prophet of God had told the king of Israel not to do it, right? So
You said a traitor, but it also could have been a spy.
absolutely, could have been a spy too. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what Ralph had in mind there.
But it wasn't. It was God.
Right, absolutely. It says the king of Syria was naturally mystified by the way the king of Israel knew all the Syrians' plans beforehand. He was convinced that there was a traitor among them until one servant revealed that Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, knew and revealed these things to the king of Israel.
Well, he didn't think that because his pagan gods never gave him.
Any kind of update on what was going on.
That's right.
Right. Reminds me of the sermon I preached about the pagan gods that couldn't help themselves, that were like loaded on burros and taken away, as the people cried out to them to help them, and they themselves got put in bondage. You remember that? And so, yeah, absolutely. We're going to pick back up there at 14? It says, therefore he sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. And when the servant of the man of God arose early and went out, there was an army surrounding the city with horses and chariots. And his servant said to him, alas, my master, what shall we do? So he answered, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And Elisha prayed, and the Lord prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. Then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So when the Syrians came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, strike this people, I pray, with blindness. And he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. Then Elisha said to them, this is not the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. But he led them to Samaria. So it was when they had come to Samaria, that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men, and they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and there they were inside Samaria. Now when the king of Israel saw them, he said to Elisha, my father, shall I kill them? Shall I kill them? But he answered, you shall not kill them. Would you kill those whom you have taken captive, and your sword and your bow? Set food and water before them, and they may eat and drink and go to their master. Then he prepared a great feast for them, and after they ate and drank, he sent them away, and they went to their master. So the bands of Syrian raiders came no more into the land of Israel. Okay. That would be totally awesome, wouldn't it? So what happened here? Elisha called on the Lord, right? And the Lord did what?
Blinded them.
Well, not only did he blind them, he sent what?
Chariots of fire.
Yeah, angels,
More
chariots,
fire,
right?
yeah.
Said when Elijah's servants, when it says, alas, master, what shall we do? When Elijah's servant saw the horses and chariots and a great army surrounding their city, he was naturally afraid. He knew that there was little chance of escaping or surviving any attack from so many. But Elisha told him, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And this seemed unbelievable to Elisha's servant. And he saw the horses, the chariots, and a great army surrounding them. He could not see anyone who was with Elisha and him. It says, we also notice that Elisha gave his servant a reason to not fear. This was not empty hope or wishful thinking. It was a real reason for confidence, even if the servant could not see it. And then Elisha said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see, as he talks to his servants. It says Elisha did not pray that God would change anything in the situation. This only request was that the servant could actually see the reality of the situation. And yet Elisha also did not try to persuade the servant of the reality of those who were with us. The servant could not have this explained to him, nor could he be persuaded into it. He had to see it. So God answered Elijah's prayer. when a person is blind to spiritual reality, only God can open his eyes. God may do it through the words that someone speaks, but the work of the spirituality, opening eyes, is spiritual work and belongs to God alone. It says, when the eyes were opened and the servant saw the reality that he could not see before, he saw that there were really more with him and Elijah than those assembled against them. So that had to have been an awesome sight for this young servant of Elisha to see, right? God is never going to leave us by ourselves, is he?
No.
He's never going to leave us by ourselves. You know, we have to trust and obey. Trust and obey. It says the horses and chariots were the most sophisticated and mighty military instruments of that day. But the invisible army of God had literally more firepower than the horses and chariots of the Syrians. The spiritual army had chariots of fire all around Elisha. And then what happened? Elisha prayed that the eyes of the Syrians would be what? Blinded. And they were. And they became captures, right? All the Syrian soldiers were captured. It says the Syrian soldiers could not see the spiritual army, so they did not hesitate to approach Elisha, but just as the previous prayed that God would give sight to his servant, he then asked God to strike the people with blindness. So God answered this prayer, just as he previously answered the prayer to give perception to the servant. It says, this shows us that God may grant sight or send blindness according to his wisdom and in response to the prayers of his people.
Yes.
In other words, sometimes, we ask, Lord, let me see what you want me to do. And sometimes God says, no, it's not the right time. It's not my time. I don't think, that you can handle this at this point in time. So he doesn't let you see it until something that he's already taken you through. And then you look back and you can see why God didn't allow you to see that coming. It says, but Elijah said what? He said, follow me and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. Who is it talking about here?
God.
It says,
He'll tell the army, I'll take you to Elijah.
Excuse me. It says here, Elisha told a technical truth, but certainly intended to deceive. He did, in fact, bring them to the man they sought. When their eyes were open, Elisha was there with them, right? Okay? But they weren't in the place that they thought they were going to be in, were they? Now, it said, when their eyes were open, Elisha was there with them. However, he led them back to Samaria, the capital city of the kingdom of Israel, and an unfriendly place for a group of Syrian soldiers. But Elisha told the king of Israel what? What did he asked Elisha, should I kill them? Shall I kill them, right?
But to treat them like he would if he had captured them himself.
Absolutely, Jackie. Absolutely. He said instead of killing them, these enemy soldiers, Elisha instead commanded the king of Israel to treat them with kindness and generosity. This practice of answering evil with good successfully changed the policy of freelance raiders from Syria. Because what did it say at the end of that verse?
That
They raided no more.
That they raided no more. They never came back, did they? And it's a lot of times whenever you treat people with kindness, unless that person's heart is really hardened, they won't come back at you like that, will they? I've noticed, in the past when people have done that to me and I've treated them with kindness, they either don't come back to me or they don't come back to me in that same way again. you know. Of course, you know, I look real nice, but I can look real mean too.
You kill them with kindness. That's what Julie told me all the time. You kill them with kindness.
You know, God gave me a mean face. He said, "What's your war face? We want to see your war cry." You know. We see here, and I think we're going to have to stop right here at this right here. But it says, "Then he prepared a great feast for them, and after they ate and drank, he sent them away, and they went to their master. So the bands of Syrian raiders came no more into the land of Israel." Elisha, bearing divinely delegated authority, prohibited the execution of these captives. It was uncommon and unusually cruel to put war captives to death in cold blood, even when taken by the point of the sword, but especially by the miraculous power of God. Kindness would testify to the goodness of God and likely stall future opposition from the Syrian raiders. This kind deed gained a moral conquest or respect from the raiders. Good over evil. Good over evil. So I'm going to end it right there. Anybody got any questions? Because we're going to get out a little bit early today so we can get into the worship hall there. Anybody got anything?
I think God will only, the way I look at it, the heart is, God will only give you what you need, and He'll only give you what you can handle. And in this sense, this is a very, very good Bible chapter for that.
Absolutely. When Elisha and the prophets, the sons of the prophets, decided that they were going to make a bigger building, a bigger center, God provided.
Exactly.
When they lost the axe head, God provided. When the Syrian king came up against the king of Israel, God provided. God provided the vision, the word to be heard by Elisha, and for Elisha to push it on to the king of Israel, and therefore he didn't go there, and even so far as to go to show the servant the fact that there was more of them with Elisha than there was with the Syrian raiders.
I've read that.
So God provided there as well. And it's the same way in our
relationship with God.
God will provide.
That's right.
We just have to, like I said, have faith and
God's got it.
And obey. Anyone else?
Well, if he hadn't done it that way, he'd have done it some other way.
Yeah. God always has a plan, doesn't He?
Always
and
does.
His plans are always better than ours, So, most definitely, I believe you're right, Ralph. If He wouldn't have done it that way, He had another plan.
The spiritual plan always outweighs the physical plan. The physical plan is just kind of like dust when you look at it. When you think of the spiritual plan, God's got it already, the entirety of that plan in mind, and it's set.
Absolutely.
In His time.
Absolutely. Brother Terry, would you close us in a word of prayer?
Yeah, Lord, thank you for this church, Lord, and also,
Yes,
Lord, thank you for
Yes, sir.
the cooler weather, Lord, and
Yes.
Lord, we're so
Yes, sir.
awesome this renewed rain, Lord.
Yes.
And Lord, once again, we lift all the prayer requests up to you.
Yes.
All the ones that need the healing, and
Yes, sir.
Lord, that need your help, Lord. Please
Yes, sir.
be with them. Please bless
Yes,
the
sir.
song service and sermon we're about to receive. In Jesus' name, pray. Amen.
Amen.